In the global race for critical minerals, a huge move is happening right here on American soil. A massive lithium deposit is about to get a brand new life on the US stock market. So let's dive right in and unpack how an Australian company is spinning out its US assets to create a brand new NASDAQ-listed company. And here it is. This is the announcement that really gets the ball rolling. On April 9th, 2024, the Australian company Jindalee Lithium announced a binding agreement. So what's the big deal? Well, they're taking their super valuable American assets, which are all centered around a giant lithium project in Oregon, and spinning them off to be listed on a U.S. stock exchange. This is a really big step in trying to build out a domestic American lithium supply chain. So, just how big of a deal are we talking about here? The implied enterprise value for this new company is a pretty staggering 571 million US dollars. Yeah, we're not talking about some small startup here. This is a heavyweight entry into the US critical mineral sector, and it's backed by a really substantial valuation right from the get-go. At the heart of this whole thing is the new company, and it's called US Elemental Inc. Its entire mission, its whole reason for being, is to develop the McDermitt Lithium project, which happens to be one of the largest known lithium deposits in the United States. US Elemental is literally being created and funded to bring this American resource to life. Okay, so you're probably asking, how does an Australian company's subsidiary just magically appear on the NASDAQ? Well, it's not magic, it's actually a pretty clever financial maneuver. Let's break down the mechanics of exactly how this whole transaction is structured. The key here is something called a SPAC. That stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. And the way it works is actually pretty interesting. Just think of a SPAC as a publicly traded company that's basically a pot of cash. It exists for one reason, to find a private company and merge with it. By doing that, the private company, in this case Jindalee's US assets, gets to become public itself, all while bypassing the super long traditional IPO process. In this chart, it really lays it all out. On the left, under Current, you can see the simple structure. You've got Jindalee, an Australian company, which owns 100% of its U.S. subsidiary, Hi-Tech Minerals. And Hi-Tech owns 100% of the McDermitt project. Simple enough. But now, look at the pro forma structure. This is after the deal. Jindalee creates US Elemental, which is going to be listed on NASDAQ. Then Hi-Tech tucks in as a subsidiary of US Elemental. So you see, all the new investors and the SPAC sponsor are injecting their capital right into US Elemental, the new US-listed company. So who actually owns this new company? This chart breaks it all down for us. Even after the deal and after bringing in all this new capital, the original parent company, Jindalee Lithium, is expected to hold on to a massive stake. We're talking over 80% in the newly formed US Elemental. The rest is held by the SPAC sponsors and the new investors who are bringing the cash. So the key takeaway here is that Jindalee is unlocking value. They're not selling out. All right, so we've talked about the corporate structures and the financial figures, but behind all of that is a massive, real-world physical asset. Let's shift gears now and focus on what makes this deal so valuable in the first place, the McDermitt Lithium project. And this is it. It's located out in southeastern Oregon, and the McDermitt project sits within this vast, arid landscape. I mean, just look at it. This is a huge and undeveloped area, and it holds the potential to become a cornerstone of America's battery supply chain for decades to come. Okay, let's talk numbers, because honestly, they're pretty mind-blowing. According to the 2023 estimate, the project has a combined resource of 3 billion tons of material. And from that, they estimate a potential of 21.5 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent, or LCE. That's the standard metric the industry uses. And to put that in perspective, that is a world-class resource by any global standard. It's just enormous. And this isn't some brand new overnight discovery either. This project has been methodically worked on and de-risked over several years. As you can see on this timeline, it started with the initial confirmation back in 2018, then moved through successful metallurgical tests, and then came the huge resource estimate in 2022. Every single step has built more and more confidence. This US listing is really just the logical next step to get the funding for its next big phase. Which, of course, brings us to the big strategic questions. Why do this at all? I mean, why spin out the asset and list it on a US exchange? And why is the timing right now? Well, the company's CEO, Ian Roger, he puts it very plainly. He says it right here, it's all about one thing, getting access to the deep US capital markets. Look, developing a mine of this scale costs an insane amount of money. And the best place to find that kind of funding for US-based project is, you guessed it, right here in the US. So let's just quickly recap those strategic drivers. First, like the CEO said, it's all about access to capital. This deal is designed to fund the next crucial steps, like more drilling and those super detailed feasibility studies. It also lets them capitalize on the absolutely booming demand for batteries. And, it aligns perfectly with the US government's big push to support domestic critical mineral projects and build secure local supply chains. All right, let's pull back and look at the big picture for a second. We've gone through the what, the how, and the why. So now let's just wrap this all up with the most important takeaways and, this is crucial, a quick disclaimer. So if you remember 3 things from all this, make it these. First, a globally significant lithium deposit right here in the US is getting its own public listing on NASDAQ through a SPAC. Second, the new company, US Elemental, is launching with a valuation of well over $500 million. And third, the main reason for this whole transaction is to fund the development of a major domestic source of American lithium. Now, I have to be very, very clear about this. This explainer is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not, and it should never be considered, financial or investment advice. We are simply breaking down publicly available information on this deal. We are not recommending you take any course of action. You should always do your own research and please consult with a professional. And that brings us to our final thought for today. This deal is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. It really makes you wonder, as more of these domestic projects get funded and developed, what does this global push for secure, local mineral supply chains really mean for the future of our technology, our economy, and our energy independence? We'd love to know what you think, so drop a comment below.